Ken Starr spent $40 million investigating the sexual activities of President Clinton. Why didn't Ken Starr advocate giving money to the investigators of the World Trade Center collapse so that they didn't have to depend on part-time scientists and on a shoestring budget? In May 2002, FEMA released the report on the collapse of the buildings. Not surprisingly, the report doesn't explain anything. For example, rather than explain how the fires caused Building 7 to collapse, the FEMA report has this: the specifics of the fires in Building 7 and how they caused the building to collapse remain unknown at this time. Our government spent 7 months investigating the collapse of the World Trade Center buildings, and at the end they announce they have no idea what happened to Building 7. If FEMA was a private company, I would demand my money back. Since they are a government agency, their worthless report is evidence that they are involved in covering up a scam. FEMA claims that they cannot understand how Building 7 collapsed, but perhaps you and I can figure it out by watching the videos of it collapsing. Incidentally, this video is lousy because it comes from people who recorded the TV news. As with the security video that shows Flight 77 crashing into the Pentagon, nobody wants to provide good quality video of Building 7 as it collapses. At the top of Building 7 is a rectangular penthouse that contains air conditioning and other equipment. If you recall, the fires were on the lower floors, not near the roof. However, the penthouse is the first part of the building to collapse. How could the fires cause damage to the penthouse without damaging all the floors in between? Here's a different view of the collapse. And another view. When fires cause steel buildings to crumble, do they normally produce this much dust? Well, since fire has never caused a steel building to crumble before, I guess we'll never know if this dust is typical. The person who took this next video decided to point his camera at Building 7 at just the right moment. If you've never seen a demolition of an old building, there's a DVD called What a Blast that shows how buildings are demolished. Notice that the dust comes from the base of the building, just as with Building 7. Also, the building falls down very quickly because the pieces are free-falling. They often cause the middle of the building to fall first, in order to pull the outer walls inward. PBS has a documentary called America Rebuilds, in which Larry Silverstein, the landlord of Building 7, explains what happened.
I remember getting a call from the fire department commander telling me that they were not sure they were going to be able to contain the fire. And I said, you know, we've had such terrible loss of life. Maybe the smartest thing to do is pull it. And they made that decision to pull, and then we watched the building collapse.
Which is more believable? FEMA claiming they have no idea what happened to Building 7? Or Silverstein claiming that the fire department demolished the building rather than bother putting out the fires, and without giving the tenants the opportunity to remove their documents and equipment? Now that you've seen how the building collapsed, do you think these tiny fires were responsible? If so, how did the fire destroy the entire steel structure? Building 7 collapsed in the same manner that demolition companies destroy old buildings. They use explosives to shatter the joints holding the steel beams together. The explosives are detonated in a sequence that causes the building to fall vertically downward into a tiny pile of rubble. Also, when the building is tall, the explosives are often timed to destroy the interior of the building before the exterior walls are broken, thereby causing the interior section to fall first. As the interior pieces fall, they pull the exterior walls towards the interior. This creates a small pile of rubble with the exterior walls laying on top of the rubble. Photos of the rubble from Building 7 show exactly that, namely the exterior walls on top of the interior pieces. Normally, if a 47-story steel building crumbled into a pile of rubble because of a couple of tiny fires, people around the world would be shocked and want to know what happened. Architects would be interested in understanding what happened so that they could design buildings better. People who live or work in tall buildings would wonder, can fire do this to my building? However, are any architects asking why Building 7 fell down? Are any people in tall buildings wondering if their building might also fall down? Why does nobody care that a steel building disintegrated for no apparent reason? Part of the problem is that most people simply don't know much about Building 7 due to the incredible secrecy surrounding this building. We were frequently told of the evilness of Osama and Saddam, but how often did you see the collapse of Building 7? How many articles did you find in newspapers or magazines about Building 7? The only explanation for this secrecy that I can think of is that nobody can explain how Osama caused Building 7 to collapse. By keeping this issue a secret, they are hoping that people will forget about the incident, rather than ask, "What happened to Building 7?" One possible reason for the secrecy about Building 7 is that it may have been the control center for demolishing the World Trade Center. The 23rd floor of this building was given $15 million worth of renovations to make it into an emergency command center for Mayor Giuliani. For example, it was given bullet and bomb-resistant windows. There is nothing strange about adding reinforcements to a government office to protect them in case of attack. In fact, many retail businesses have bullet-resistant windows. However, this particular office had its own air and water supply, and it was designed to withstand winds of 160 miles per hour. To make the situation more suspicious, the reinforcements were only for this one floor, so that meant most of the building was just an ordinary office building. Why would they protect only one floor? This seems as silly as installing bulletproof glass in only one window of the president's automobile. Furthermore, why would they need their own air supply? And how about the protection from a 160-mile-per-hour wind? Well, consider that when the towers fell down, clouds of dust and grit were thrown outward at a very high speed. The only people protected from that blast were in this special emergency command center. Of course, the city government claims the entire building was evacuated at 9 in the morning, so nobody was inside this special reinforced bunker when the towers collapsed. This meant that the city spent $15 million to make this special reinforced bunker, and then everybody abandoned it just when it would have been useful. But did everybody really abandon Building 7? It would have been a great place for people to supervise the attack because the 23rd floor provided a wonderful view of the area, and the occupants were protected from the dust and debris. To make the situation even more suspicious, as I explain in more detail in the book, the flight paths of the two airplanes that hit the towers appear to have been on a course towards Building 7, as if this building was broadcasting a homing signal. The government's explanation for how the towers collapsed is often referred to as the pancake theory. The report created by FEMA has only two diagrams to explain this theory. The first diagram shows a fire, and the next diagram shows a floor falling down onto the floor below it. Supposedly, the falling floor breaks the joints holding the floor beneath it, and then both of those floors fall to the floor below that, which breaks that floor, and so on, eventually creating a stack of floors at the base of the building. One problem with this theory is that photographs of the South Tower show the top section broke off and fell to the ground, landing on top of building number 4. The pancake theory definitely does not explain the South Tower. However, just as FEMA did not bother to explain what happened to Building 7, FEMA did not bother to explain what happened to the South Tower. The towers did not simply fall down or break into pieces. Rather, as jets of dust flew out the windows at extreme velocity, that portion of the building disintegrated.